Today on the newscast, another rocket barrage targets Americans in Iraq. The third such attack in the span of just 1 week. Find out what is going on here, who is behind this, and how I believe America should and should not respond. That's coming up. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. Yet another rocket barrage against American personnel inside Iraq. Yesterday, Monday, February 22nd, 2 Katyusha rockets fell inside the green zone in Baghdad. They came very close to the U.S. Embassy building, also came near the Joint Operations Command Center where U.S. military personnel work with their Iraqi counterparts. Now, no one was killed and no one was injured, thank God, but clearly this was a targeted attack. American personnel, military and non-military alike, are obviously walking around freely inside that green zone, which is a huge area, covers a few square miles inside Baghdad, but no one hurt. That is the key takeaway here. But the other takeaway is this now fits a pattern. Folks, this was the third such attack in the past 8 days alone. On Saturday, February 20th, 4 rockets rained down on an Iraqi airbase which houses American contractors, U.S. defense contractors. 4 rockets hit that airbase just north of Baghdad. 1 person was wounded. Thankfully, again, no one killed, but this all kicked off this current string of rocket barrages last Monday, February 15th, with a major onslaught of rockets against U.S. military personnel in northern Iraq, in Erbil, which is the capital of Iraqi Kurdistan, right at Erbil International Airport. Now, that was a deadly attack. 5 Americans, first of all, were wounded, 1 American soldier and 4 American contractors, but also a foreign contractor who worked closely with U.S. forces in Iraq was killed in this rocket barrage. Okay, who's behind it? The attack last week, and we talked about this on the Tuesday, February 16th newscast. You can check it out right here in our archives on YouTube. The claim for responsibility for that attack last week was by a group, a radical Shia faction operating inside Iraq, calling itself in English the Guardians of Blood. Very interesting. There have not been claims of responsibility for the ensuing attacks on February 20th and February 22nd. But folks, I think it is pretty clear whose fingerprints are on these rocket barrages, and that is the Iranian regime, which has a long track record of operating or putting these Shia proxies into operation inside Iraq to strike against U.S. forces. This is their MO, and now there is an uptick, and it is not a coincidence. I'll get into that in a second. Before I do, I just want to mention that the U.S. really, if there is going to be a U.S. presence in Iraq, there's some 2,500 troops there still, most of them in the north of the country, in the Kurdistan region, then there needs to be better missile and rocket defense, clearly, because these barrages happen now on a pretty regular basis, going back even to the previous administration. But Israel supplied the U.S. with 2 Iron Dome missile defense batteries back in January. So are they being used yet? Will they be used? It remains to be seen, because look, Israel has had great success with the Iron Dome, obviously, in warding off Hamas rocket barrages and rocket barrages out of Syria. So hopefully the U.S. and Iraqi forces can duplicate that success in Iraq using Iron Dome to ward off and to destroy these rocket barrages, which, again, are directed by Iran. They're not an accident. They're not a coincidence. It is Iraqi Shia militias under the orders of the Iranian regime carrying out these attacks, and the goal is twofold. Number one, to push U.S. forces out of Iraq and out of the Middle East once and for all, and to have U.S. forces leave, in the Iranians' view, with their tails between their legs and beat a hasty retreat. Do you remember that footage of U.S. troops leaving Vietnam in 1975? That is the kind of footage that the Iranians would love to see in Iraq. That's number one. Number two, this is a blackmail strategy. What the Iranian regime is saying here is, if you don't give us what we want, we will continue to cause major problems for you, America, not only in Iraq, but around the world. And hey, we may even spark a new conflict against Israel using our proxies that are perched on Israel's borders. And what does Iran want? Number one, first and foremost, they want U.S. sanctions lifted. Those sanctions, folks, have been highly effective, crippling the Iranian economy. The Trump administration put them into place. Joe Biden has said that he will not lift sanctions. Again, he said this on Super Bowl Sunday during an interview with CBS News, said he was going to keep the sanctions in place. Folks, I said it then, I'll say it again. Keep an eye on that and let's hold Biden to his word, because last Friday, February 19th, he gave a speech at the Munich Security Conference where he declared for the world his intention to reopen talks with the Iranian regime. And I can tell you that a re-entry back into that disastrous Iran nuclear deal will not be far behind. And what does that entail? You can't have the deal without the U.S. lifting sanctions. So on Super Bowl Sunday, February 7th, Joe Biden said one thing. Let's see if he does another thing and if those sanctions are indeed lifted. Folks, to me, that is the completely wrong approach to the Iranian regime. We are caving in to the blackmail. Think about it. Again, we're going to fire more rockets. We will carry out more terror. We will enrich more uranium if you don't do what we want you to do. Classic blackmail. Just yesterday, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei said that, hey, number one, if we want the bomb, if we want to acquire nuclear weapons, no one can stop us. And I'm quoting him, the Supreme Leader of Iran, no one can stop Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons if we so choose. Oh, and by the way, we may start enriching uranium to a 60% level, which is far beyond what is permitted under that Iran nuclear deal that thankfully President Trump pulled the United States out of in May 2018. We shouldn't rush headlong. As an American, I say this, we should not rush headlong back into nuclear talks and give them what they want and cave into the blackmail. We also should not, for instance, have lifted the terrorist designation against the Houthis in Yemen, another Iranian proxy stirring things up there. The Houthis had the designation lifted a few weeks ago by the Biden administration after the Trump administration had laid that designation down, referring to the Houthis in Yemen, and rightly so, as a specially designated terrorist organization, a full-on Iranian proxy. Biden removes that designation. And what did the Houthis do? Did they suddenly begin to behave themselves and disarm and back off? No. Folks, right now the Houthis are in the midst of a bloody major offensive in Yemen in which they are trying to seize more territory. Appeasement never works. I've said it before. Sadly, I will probably have to say it again many times over the next few weeks, months, and years. But we will be watching this, and we're watching this pattern, this trend that you're not hearing about in the mainstream media with these rocket barrages. Hey, folks, look, God is sovereign over the entire situation. I say this as an American. I say this as a follower of Jesus. I know that God still sits on the throne. I know that he is completely sovereign over the entire situation. I'm not sitting here biting my nails and worrying every day. I have the peace that surpasses all understanding, and that is found only in the Lord Jesus Christ. So if you don't know him, get to know him for such a time as this. He is the way to get through this mess that we are in right now. I say that as an American. I say it as a world, as the world right now is kind of reeling from setback after setback, crisis after crisis. Turn to God. He's got the answers for your life and for this world if we will only open our hearts to him and listen to him and do things his way and not our way. Hey, thanks for joining us today on the Watchman Newscast. Until tomorrow, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.